Right, good morning. I'm Alan Barrett, CEO of AFRINIC, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what AFRINIC has been doing recently. So far in this year, we've signed up 31 new members in the first 3 months, which is more or less on target, maybe a little bit above the target that we set ourselves for new members. And at the bottom there, you can see a graph of how our membership has been growing over the past 11 years or so. And at the moment, we have a little less than 1,500 members. Out of our 1,467 resource members, between them, they hold about 6.1/8 of v4 space. That's 102 million/32s if you want to count them in that way. We also have legacy space holders who received IPv4 resources from elsewhere before AFRINIC was set up. And between them, they hold about 8.5 million IPv4 addresses. That's about half of a /8. We do not have any contracts with our legacy space holders. We just offer them WHOIS service and reverse DNS. So far this year, in 2017, we've allocated about 3.2 million v4 addresses and 20/32s of v6 and 35 AS numbers. No, 36 AS numbers. So our v6 allocation is a bit behind some of the other regions. Right now, about 40.7% of the AFRINIC members have a v6 allocation. And in some cases, they might have that space and even be announcing it, but not really be using it properly. So v6 education is a big part of what we do. Yesterday, we reached our final /8 milestone. So we approved a request which would drop us below the final /8. So that triggers our IPv4 soft landing policy. And the soft landing policy is divided into 2 phases. Phase 1 has just been triggered yesterday, and there's a list at the bottom of what changes. The maximum space that you can receive in a single application is a /13. Previously, there was no real limit. If you could justify a huge amount of space, and if we had it available, then you could receive it. But under soft landing phase 1, you can't get more than a /13. When you justify your need for IPv4 space, it can be based on an 8 months projection of your future needs, whereas previously it was 12 months. We're reserving a /12 out of the final /8 for unforeseen future needs, and that's really for the board to decide what to do with it if they ever make a decision. And of course, it's possible that policy might change. Even though we've already reached this milestone, nothing stops our community from changing the policies. And then another change in the rules as we reach exhaustion phase 1 is that use of AFRINIC space outside the AFRINIC region must be to support connectivity back to the region. So the way we're interpreting this is it applies only to space that you receive during the exhaustion phase. So if you're already an AFRINIC member and you already have some space and you're already using it outside the region under previous rules, that's still okay. But if you want to receive more space during the exhaustion phase, then any use of that additional space will have to satisfy this new rule that out-of-region use is only to support connectivity back to the region. So more or less what that implies is if you want to put some equipment down at an exchange point outside of Africa, then that's okay. But if you want to serve customers outside of Africa, then that's not okay under this policy. v6 deployment is very important, and as I said, AFRINIC is behind. We offer free training on IPv6 deployment We are busy setting up some online training. We do lots of in-person training. I've got another slide with some statistics there, but we're planning to offer more than 20 V6 training courses throughout Africa this year. Last year we've launched an IPv6 certification program called Certi6. The certification platform is accredited by the IPv6 forum, and the basic idea is you do an online test, and if you do well enough in the test, you get a certificate which is from AFRINIC, which is accredited by the IPv6 forum. And we offer these tests, even though it's an online test, we plan to offer them in invigilated environments. So we'll have somebody overseeing the test to make sure that there's no cheating. We've got an IPv6 test bed, which is a whole bunch of routers in a virtual environment where you can connect and run experiments. It doesn't see much use by the general public, but we are using it as part of our training courses. Okay. We have several policies up for discussion. I'm just going to skip to the next one. I want to discuss page 2 before page 1. Yesterday we reached our soft landing phase 1. There are policies up for discussion, policy proposals to change how the soft landing will work. And one of them is called IPv4 Soft Landing BIS. And this will change several of the rules. In the maximum allocation size, instead of a /13 as it is now, looks like a mistake on the slide, it's not a 10. Instead of a /13 as it is now, they're proposing that the maximum size will be a /15. When we get down to only 1/10 remaining, that will be the start of phase 2 of the soft landing. And at that point, the maximum allocation size will be a /22. In terms of this proposal, the allocation period, your future projections for how you're going to grow as part of justification for your need will be 8 months. That's the same as it is today under the current soft landing policy, but it's different from what it used to be before we hit soft landing. Then this proposal will reserve a /16 for critical infrastructure, and that more or less means exchange points and important DNS operators. You'll have to read the details of the policy to see exactly how that's defined. There's been some controversy about that. For example, one of the points which was not very clear in the past version of the proposal was whether all TLD operators or only CCTLDs would qualify. Okay, so that's a proposal which has been on the table for almost a year, I think. And then the other policy proposal to change soft landing was put on the mailing list only a few days ago. Was it yesterday or the day before? And this will change the soft landing policy in different ways. Right? Similar ideas to what you saw under the other proposal, but different numbers, different details. So it proposes to change the maximum allocation to a /17 in phase 1 and a /20 in phase 2. And then this confusing wording that no limit on the number of requests unless a member has received allocation or assignment equivalent to the maximum prefix. What that means is the maximum is a /17. If you get several /19s in several separate applications, then that's okay, as long as the total doesn't exceed the equivalent of a /17. So in effect, a member will be able to come back as many times as they like during phase 1 to get lots of small pieces that add up to a 17. And then they'll be able to come back in phase 2 to get either a single /20 or a few smaller pieces that add up to a /20. So this proposal is also formally under discussion. It was just posted to the mailing list a few days ago. Okay, then we have a policy proposal on transfers. Let me first talk about the other one. This one. There's a policy proposal on transfers within the AFRINIC region. So both parties, the sender and the receiver, both have to be AFRINIC members in the AFRINIC region. This policy has passed community consensus. It's passed last call in the community. It's waiting for board ratification. There is a small twist to it, and that our current RSA, the Registration Services Agreement, the contract that members sign with AFRINIC, prohibits transfers, and so we have to change the RSA before we can implement this policy. Okay, then there's a proposal. The one I just talked about is past the community, not yet past the board. Now I move on to a separate proposal, which is still in discussion in the community, about inbound transfers. That's from another region, a different RIR region, into AFRINIC. And there's no consensus on this proposal. It's still under discussion. And it does not provide for outbound transfers where the sender is in the AFRINIC region and the recipient is outside the region. And we understand that might be a problem for some other RIRs to implement the reciprocal side of that. I'm pretty sure that ARIN will find it outside their policy that they won't allow transfers from ARIN to AFRINIC unless AFRINIC also allows transfers in the other direction. Anyway, the proposal's under discussion. We'll see what happens. Right. Then there's a proposal which has been called the audit proposal, which wants AFRINIC staff to conduct routine audits to review how our members are utilizing the space and to recover space where they're not in compliance with the policy. This is under discussion. Discussions have been quite heated at times, and there's no consensus on this. All right, so that's it for the policies under discussion. I mentioned earlier that AFRINIC does a lot of training and encouragement of V6 deployment. This is some more detail about that. So this year in 2017, we will be in 22 countries all around Africa offering training in IPv6. Since we started this in 2010, we've been to 40 countries and we've trained more than 3,000 people in how to set up IPv6 networks. We get very good feedback from the participants in the training, so we think we're doing a good job there. We run a grants and awards program called FIRE, the Fund for Internet Research and Education. We receive some money from donors. IDRC, Google, and the Internet Society contribute funds which AFRINIC manages under this grants and awards program. We support projects throughout Africa that harness the power of the internet to do good things, to improve lives. And just last week at RightsCon in Brussels, the winners of the Mozilla Equal Ratings Challenge were announced, and I'm very pleased to tell you that 2 of the projects that AFRINIC's FIRE program supported were finalists in the Mozilla Equal Ratings Challenge, and one of them actually finished in 2nd place. And these are both community network projects, one's offering free public Wi-Fi, and they're doing more than that, also skills development. They produce content. They have a way of people can contribute photojournalism, and then they distribute it over their community Wi-Fi. And the other one's called Libra Router, which is about writing open source code to run on commodity hardware to help provision community networks. We've distributed in 2016 just over $250,000 of funding to 13 projects. We have 2 meetings a year, just like every other RIR. Our next one is in Nairobi, Kenya, last week of May, going into the first couple of days of June. And that'll be the AFRINIC 26 meeting, held in conjunction with the the Africa Internet Summit. You're all invited, of course. And even if you can't make it, you can contribute to the AFRINIC policy discussions. You can follow the meeting online. We will have an audio feed. We publish the videos on YouTube. I think we'll do live streaming on YouTube as well. We run this meeting in conjunction with several other African organizations. There's AFNOG, African Network Operators Group. We work with ISOC. They also run some side events there. We have some agreements with AFRELO, the ICANN regional at-large organization for Africa. Africa CERT, a few others whose names I've forgotten. And AFRINIC also has a fellowship program. This year we're bringing 11 fellows to our meeting. And for the first time, there'll be more women than men in the fellows program. And from a good distribution of countries around Africa. Okay, thank you. Any questions?
David Farmer, University of Minnesota, ARIN AC. You mentioned several community network projects that essentially you were sponsoring.
Mm-hmm.
Does AFRINIC have any policy relating to community networks?
Very good question. No, we do not have a policy relating to community networks. We also do not have a special fee structure for community networks. And in the past, the board made an exception for one particular community network that asks to have their fees waived, and the board said okay, but that was done as an exception.
Okay, thank you.
The board is currently in the process of reviewing the fees, and it is quite possible that there might be something in the new fee structure dealing with non-profits, community networks, and so on.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Alan? Thank you, Alan.
Right, thanks.